All right, without further ado, let us dive into the news. I want to start off with the passing of Osamu Kido, who was, a fixture within Japanese professional wrestling going all the way back to the late 60s when he debuted for the JWA and then leaving when Inoki did and was part of that very first day roster of New Japan Pro Wrestling on March the 6th of 1972. He was on the undercard where Inoki faced Karl Gotch in the main event at Oda Ward City Gymnasium, which is still where they always hold the anniversary card each and every year up until the present. So he was just part of the fabric of New Japan throughout the 70s. Him and Tatsumi Fujinami, they traveled together over to Germany, and Kido was very much under the mentorship of Karl Gotch. He went to train with him in Florida and then returned to New Japan. That was sort of his excursion. And then when the UWF got going, it was sort of at the prompting of Gotch that Kido decided to break away from New Japan and go to this upstart, which included the likes of like Fujiwara and Nobuhiko Takada. And of course, you had Akira Maeda. And when the UWF folded, a lot of the big stars came back to New Japan, and you did sort of the promotion versus promotion angle. Kido was involved in that, but he's probably not the most famous match of Kido's career, but it was one that he was kind of caught in the middle of. And that's a very famous match from November of 1987. It was a 6-man tag where Kido was teaming with Maeda. It was a 6-man tag, and what was happening was that Riki Choshu was applying the Sasori Gatame, the Scorpion Deathlock, onto Kido. And as he's basically doing the move, he's putting the legs through. And before he's wrapping him around and turning, in comes Akira Maeda, who blasts Choshu with a kick to the face, breaking his orbital bone. A very legitimate spot here. And they did get the match like kind of back on track to get a finish. But this was a huge scandal in Japan. It was a very ugly moment in professional wrestling that here was a guy that was essentially defenseless, that did not know this was coming, and gets his orbital bone shattered. And I think this would play so much differently today. Like, this person would probably be just scorned by the wrestling public for such a heinous action. But in this era of professional wrestling in Japan, it gave Maeda the rep as like this dangerous shooter. And so when he would not accept this punishment, he left, and he was they relaunched the UWF, built it around Maeda. And this scene was kind of like his shooter rep that he got, as here is somebody that got in this controlled environment that we thought of as pro wrestling. Here's a guy that is not just playing by the rules of professional wrestling. So it actually kind of enhanced his image, even if it was a pretty deplorable action that is really hard to applaud. But this was, it was Osamu Kido, who was kind of just the third man there in the midst of this thing between Maeda and Choshu. But so for the second go around of the UWF, Kido does not leave New Japan. He stays with the company, and he's, again, a fixture in a lot of the tournaments each year, both the precursor to the G1 and for the World Tag League. He participated in some of the formal G1s in the mid-90s. His last one was in 2000, and then retired in 2001. And he would come back over the next decade in sporadic matches for Big Mouth Loud. He did an All Japan match, an Inoki Genome Federation match. But his post-wrestling legacy was as one of the coaches in the dojo, and he was training a lot of sort of that next generation, like Wataru Inoue was involved there, Ryusuke Taguchi, Kenzo Suzuki. But I would say maybe the most prominent one he was attached to was as the trainer for Shinsuke Nakamura. And he was this is when Yuji Nagata was one of the coaches, but was really not hands-on with Nakamura. Like, Kido was his specific trainer. He was there in the corner for him when Nakamura debuted in 2002. And they saw Nakamura as, like, this is at the time of the whole crossover to MMA. And Nakamura was one of the guys thrown into some of these fights and actually came out of it ahead of things and kind of got like a good rep for himself. And you look at the MMA crossovers, Nakamura was not one of those guys who got kind of tarnished by it. He actually like elevated his legacy from it. But Nakamura talked about Kido at length in his book that came out a number of years ago. So I'm sure an awful loss for Nakamura as well. But Kido had quietly been battling cancer for a number of years, so he was 73 years of age. So our condolences to him, but it was just a fixture in Japanese wrestling going back decades and decades.